Okay, welcome Bookish Fiends to my second ever book wrap up or reading wrap up for the month of October. I had an ambitious TBR for October. I wanted to read all these different books and I had all these goals set for myself, and I'm so proud to say that while I didn't necessarily follow or stick to my TBR, I did hit my goal of reading 14 books this month, which I am so proud and so excited for. I also improved my reading speed a little bit, and that helped me to reach that goal. And to top it off, I had 8 5-star reads this month. So all in all, October was a terrific reading month for me. So let's get into all the different books that I read for October and the 2 books, or the short stories and the graphic novel, that I read to celebrate the Halloween season and to have a nice spooky Halloween night. So let's get into it. Okay, so let's start by digging into all of the physical books that I read this October. The first one is Killers of the Flower Moon by David Grann. And in this historical retelling, we learn of the Osage murders that occurred in 1920s Oklahoma. And due to the sheer number and volume of these cases and the fact that it wasn't being properly investigated, it led to the birth and the creation of the FBI in response to this situation to solve this case and to find out who the culprit was and to determine who was killing the Osage indigenous people. And this story was very disturbing. It was very frustrating. It was very angering to me. Just reading about the injustices, the plight of the Osage indigenous people and what they went through after having or being forced to move and relocate from their homeland to different locations due to the white settlers at the time coming in and taking over their land and displacing them. And then when they finally get a nice settlement and they finally find home and oil is discovered on their land, and this creates them to have money and to become rich and to receive money from the government and to have head rights assigned to them. And when all of this kind of flows out and it plays out, the bigotry and the racism that arises from this and leads to diabolical, sinister plans to murder and to take these head rights and take this money from the Osage indigenous people. It was very disturbing and very upsetting. And I feel like it's very important to know your history and to learn of these things, because it helps us to be better people. It helps us to understand other people and to empathize so that we don't repeat these situations. We don't continue with these attitudes, these mindsets, and these thoughts. So I do think that if you enjoy reading and learning about historical events and things that have happened in American history and just world history period, this is something that is very good to read. Although if you're easily triggered by racism, by crime against indigenous people, this may be something that you might not want to read, because it's very heavily on that, and there are a lot of racist, bigoted overtures in here. But I still think it's very important to read and to understand what happened during this time period, and to understand, I think, an important element of American history. And I gave this 5 fabulous stars because I think that Gran has such a unique and a talented way of retelling historical events in such a way that they're immersive, they're not boring, it doesn't come about as like some textbook retelling of history. It's very impactful, very educational, it makes you feel things. It makes you feel, I don't know, it's very emotion evoking. And I appreciate his writing style, and I appreciate the fact that he retells these unique historical events that are often forgotten and not talked about, and that he brings them to the surface and encourages conversation about these events. So 5 fabulous stars. The next book that I read in October was The Hacienda by Isabel Cañas, and oh my gosh, this story was amazing. So in this story, we meet Beatrice as she is newlywed and has just married Don Rodolfo Sorazano. I don't know if I'm saying his name right. I'm not of Hispanic or Latin descent, so forgive me. I speak very American, so I'm gonna probably not speak these names as well. But she's just married Don Rodolfo Sorazano, and she's in the process of moving into his hacienda, San Isidro, and her claim is to basically take ownership of the power that his name and that his money will enable her to escape her tumultuous past, so that she can secure a better future for herself and for her mother. So she's going to San Isidro because she wants to take ownership of this hacienda, to build it up and to make it a safe haven for her and her mother to secure a better future for them. But as she moves in there and starts to settle in, she discovers that there is a malevolent evil presence within the hacienda that is causing danger as far as physical and emotional and mental danger to her, and is manipulating her and leaves her very scared and disturbed. And as she reaches out to help from her sister-in-law, Juana, and the lead housemaid, Ana Luisa, she encounters resistance. She reaches out to the local church there in her community and wants the head priest, to do an exorcism on the home. And she again faces resistance and backlash from this. And so she meets Padre Andreas, who believes her and who wants to assist and help her. And so begins this journey to cleanse and exorcise this home, to better prepare it for her and her mother, and the challenges and the dangers that ensue because of this. And this story, this woman that wrote this story, let me tell you, she is a fantastic, brilliant writer. The way that she crafts her prose, it's so beautiful. It's so exquisite. It's so immersive. It just captures you and it just pulls you into the story. It makes you feel all the feelings, makes you really dig into the setting, into the time period, and you just really feel a part of it and just swept away by it all. And I'm just, every time I read her books, I'm blown away by her capability of doing this. And this book, it was definitely, wow. It was definitely amazing the way that she does this. And the characterization, when it comes to the characters, they're so dynamic, they're so rich, they're so flawed and imperfect with their motivations, especially when you really think about Beatrice's motivation for even wanting to marry Don Rodolfo and to move into San Isidro. It was all about power. It was all about improving her station. It was all about accessing a better life due to her being mestizo and of mixed race. And, you know, during that climate of time, that wasn't necessarily accepted. There was a lot of bigoted, racist ideals when it came to that. So she was, again, trying to access more power. And while that may be flawed and not ideal, when you think of the time and the climate of that time period, you can understand and kind of empathize with her and her desire to want a better life for her and her mother due to all the past circumstances that they've been through. And following the war of the Mexican independence and all that transpired and how that impacted her family and contributed to the loss of her father. Just all these different things that were at play that led to her complexity, led to her decision-making, led to her even being and arriving at that hacienda. I found it very enriching and very complex, and I really, really enjoyed that aspect of her being able to do that and to just craft this story by immersing these historical bits and parts of history of Mexico, and it just really enriches the story. It gives you a better understanding of the characters' motivations and makes you more empathetic to their plight. And again, it kind of educates you a little bit, even though you shouldn't get your history from historical fiction, but it does give you more awareness about different plights and different things that people and cultures go through. I don't know. I just found all of these elements that she spoke of when it comes to introducing the racial climate, when it comes to introducing the colonization, when it comes to introducing the imbalance and the power imbalance as far as it pertains to class and the elitism. I found that to enrich the story and also contribute to the plot as what was happening with Beatrice and what she was going through and why it was easy to discount her and to not believe her. So that was interesting and added another tremendous element to the story. It just, I could talk about this all day, and I'm trying to not like go all in on these books because I'm a motor mouth and I can go on about this book. But just to cut it short, this is a very amazing book. I gave this 5 fabulous stars because it blew my mind. I had a tremendously awesome experience with this. When I finished this book and I turned the last page and I was done, I was just so enraptured and shook by what I read. It was that amazing, that mind-blowing. Definitely check this out if you haven't, and I swear to you, you will enjoy it. The next read was The Only One Left by Riley Sager, and while for me, I don't know for you, but for some people, specifically speaking to me, Riley Sager can be a hit or miss author for me. Sometimes he's just banging home runs for me, and I'm constantly chasing that high that I got when I read his first book, The House Across the Lake. And other times I'm just like, not so much. But when it came to this book, this was an amazing experience. So in The Only One Left, we learn of Lenora Hope, who is suspected of being the murderer when it comes to her family massacre that happened in the 1920s. And she's been living under that suspicion all of her life. She was never brought to justice, never accused or arrested for the crime due to lack of evidence. So she's just lived her life with this cloud of suspicion that she potentially massacred her entire family. Flash forward to the 80s, where now she's an elder woman. Due to multiple strokes and to polio, she is mute. She is bound to a wheelchair, unable to walk and to function on her own, and is in the need of a health aide or a nurse to properly care for her. But due to the untimely disappearance of her prior healthcare aide, she has to employ the use of another healthcare aide and enters Kit McDeer into the chat. So she also has a tumultuous past that she is desperately trying to correct due to an incident that happened at her last job, leading her to be suspended for 6 months, and she's just desperately trying to get back into the field, get back into her career, and to renew her name. Lo and behold, the way to do this is to accept this job caring for Lenora Hope, which she is just not wanting to do because she thinks this lady is a killer. She is terrified and does not want to be around her. But reluctantly, due to her being backed into her corner, she accepts this job and begins to care for Lenora Hope. So all is seemingly going okay and is going well until one night Lenora types on the typewriter that she wants to tell her everything about what happened. So this piques Kit's interest in understanding and figuring out the mystery of what really happened that night, whether it's a confession, whether she's implicating someone else. She is itching to find out the truth about what happened that night. But as she digs deeper into this mystery and into the things that Lenora is telling her, she begins to realize that these may have dangerous implications on the present time and the present situation that is happening within the Hope Mansion, and could lead back to issues with what really happened with the disappearance of the last healthcare aide, and also threaten everything that she knows about her life. So this book was lovely. I really enjoyed it. I did find that Kit McDeer got on my nerves a little bit. She was a little whiny, she was a little dramatic, but sometimes in these stories you need that kind of character to, you know, allow things to happen in the plot, to allow situations to arise, or for things to be revealed, or, you know, twists to happen. So I respect that, and she did her job and she did it well. I will admit, I just sometimes get a little tired of that narrative in thrillers where a person has to constantly be like dramatic and kind of like over the top. But other than that, this book was very enjoyable. The pacing was steady and consistent, and I really enjoyed it. I love the gothic vibes introduced into the story by this crumbling mansion that is like on this cliff that's about to literally deteriorate and slip down into the sea. I love that element of it, how it was uneven. It kind of threw you off kilter. It just kind of matched the vibe with the questions concerning what happened in the Hope Mansion originally, and it just added to the suspense and the dread and just the mystery and intrigue of it all. So I really liked that aspect of it. And I loved how we teased out the whole basic confession of Lenora Hope throughout the book, and how it was just teased out throughout the book bit by bit by bit, and how that also added an element of intrigue, and how it also, you know, kind of increased the tension of the story and helped with aiding the pace. And it was just well done, well crafted. I enjoyed that element, and I really enjoyed the twists at the end. I was forewarned that the end was going to be really, really twisty, and it was, and I enjoyed that. I love twisty thrillers with multiple twists that just come from every direction. I don't know, I love that. Sue me. But I loved all the different twists that happened at the end of the story. I found them to be spectacular. I really enjoyed it. And yeah, I gave this 4.5 stars because I really enjoyed it. So the next book was Vampires of El Norte by Isabel Cañas. This is my second Isabel Cañas book of the month. And in this story, we meet Nina and Nestor, two star-crossed lovers who are just trying to figure out how they can be together, how they can create a life together, while circumstances concerning class, concerning, you know, money, all these different things threaten to keep them apart. And while they're trying to figure out their relationship status, in the midst of all that, they're encountering attacks from the Anglo settlers from the north who are trying to overtake them and seize their land, as well as vampire attacks from these creatures that are trying to like kill them. So they have a lot going on that they're trying to like overcome at this time so that they can like step into a fruitful future. Again, with this story, Isabel Cañas is amazing with her writing. It's so spot on, so exquisite, so atmospheric, pulls you in, grabs you by the throat, and this is just, it's just, her writing style is just beautiful. And I, again, thoroughly enjoyed it. The other parts of this story that I thoroughly enjoyed was that Nina was a firecracker and she took no prisoners. She was a firecracker of a character, just complex, dynamic, as with all the characters that I'm noticing that Isabel Cañas writes. The characterization is spot on. They're complex, they're dynamic, they have their faults, they have, you know, all these different dimensions to them that make them interesting, make them compelling. And when you see their character arcs and then come full circle, it just, I don't know, it creates a powerful, impactful story. And this was no different. Again, Nina, firecracker, loved her. Nestor, he was a little tortured soul for a minute there, but he kind of pulled it together and kind of pulled it up by the bootstraps and kind of became like a really, I don't know, nice, I don't want to say nice character, but a really interesting character that I really love to read about. And the longing, the angst between these two, immaculate, like immaculate, so well done. It was very good. I really enjoyed that element of the story. Again, with the historical bits and interweaving that and making that a part of the story, amazing. She does such an amazing job of that. It's just breathtaking how she does that. I don't know, this woman is my new favorite author. I'm telling you, I cannot wait for her next book to come out so that I can snatch it up and read it because she is so good. I gave this 4.5 stars. And my second Riley Sager of the month is Home Before Dark. So in this story, we follow Maggie Holt, where 20 years ago, her and her family moved into Bainbury Hall. And due to the horrific things that they encountered while they stayed there, They fled in the middle of the night, never to return, only after 21 days of staying there. Her father, so inspired by these events and wanting to tell his story, decides to write a tell-all book called The House of Horrors, detailing the events that happened while they lived there. The only thing is, Maggie does not remember any of these events transpiring, and she begins to suspect that her parents are lying, and she doesn't know why, and they won't tell her. So flash forward to the future. Maggie is an adult now, and she is settling her father's affairs after his untimely passing, and she discovers that he never sold Bayberry Hall and that she has now inherited the house. So Maggie determined to get to the bottom of everything and discover the truth, and against her parents' wishes, mind you, since they have begged her to never return to Bayberry Hall, she goes back to the house under the guise of renovating it so that she can flip it and sell it, so that she can work on improving the house to flip it and sell it, and also uncover the truth about what really happened there. And this was very well done. This pulled me in and like wrapped me around the throat, grabbed me, pulled me in, did not let me go, and just left me shook. Maggie, I loved her character. I thought that she was amazing. She wanted the truth and she went for it. She was a strong, I felt, female lead. She was very dynamic. She was complex in a lot of ways, and I just really enjoyed reading her as a character. I also like the whole book within a book point of view, where we had the House of Horrors interspersed within the present time events, and it kind of gave us a glimpse of what occurred in the past and gave you a glimpse into the book that Maggie hated, that she felt ruined her life, and we got a better understanding of her suspicions. And I don't know, to me it kind of confused me because I felt like I had my own feelings, my own thoughts, my own assumptions about it. So I just kind of like that little element in the story. It made it very interesting, create some intrigue, some distrust, a little bit of confusion where you didn't really know what to believe, what was true, what was not true. I like that element of the story. The pacing was superb. I didn't check out or feel like it was boring or that it lagged. It was consistent. And again, I think having the House of Horrors interspersed in the story and having one chapter be the House of Horrors and the next being the present timeline events and how they corresponded, it created this feeling of continuity in the story, and I really appreciated that aspect. I liked the ending, how everything wrapped up, and the twist that I don't want to say that I kind of saw it coming. I was suspicious, but when it kind of all played out, I was like, wow, okay, crazy. But I really liked it. I gave this book 5 fabulous stars because I had a terrific time and I really enjoyed it. The next book is Dracula by Bram Stoker. I finally corrected all my wrongs from not reading this book a long time ago when I should have, when I was obsessed with vampires, reading Anne Rice and reading freaking Stephanie Meyer, and I should have been reading Dracula by Bram Stoker because that's the original, but I read that wrong, and I read that this month, and it was amazing. So in this story, we follow Jonathan Harker as he travels to Transylvania to settle some affairs with the reclusive Count Dracula, as he has purchased some property in London, and he's gonna go over the paperwork with him and have him sign it and just finish those loose ends of that deal. So as he arrives at the castle and he settles in, he quickly discovers that he is actually being held prisoner, and he begins to witness some very horrific events involving the Count Dracula, and he realizes that this man is not what he seems, and that he has a little bit of a sinister, diabolical plan that he is enacting. So, yeah, this was very well written. It is slower paced. It's more intentional. It's all those things, but it's still atmospheric, strong on the gothic vibes. It still has this element and this sense of foreboding and heaviness and dread that's very overwhelming, and it kind of creates this feeling of anxiety. and tension as you read this story, kind of a fear of what's going to happen next. And while we didn't really see Count Dracula a lot in this story, we saw a little bit in the beginning and a little bit in the middle, and we didn't really get a lot of page time with him. He was such, I don't know, I felt like that was such an interesting choice, because usually you see the villain all throughout the story, but we didn't see him all throughout the story. We saw bits of him, and we had like hints or glimpses of his plan unfolding. And we kind of were under the illusion, or it was like alluded to, that it was Count Dracula. And I don't know, that element just made him feel and come across even more sinister to me. And it kind of increased my feelings of like unease and feeling unsettled and feeling dread, because I didn't know necessarily the plans that he had or what was the motivations behind what he was doing. And that kind of led me to feel more anxious, because I was like, well, what's going to happen? Like, why is he doing this? Why is he affecting this person this way? Why is he doing X, Y, Z over here? So I really like that element of how that choice, or that writing choice to do that. I felt like that benefited the story for me. I found the characters to be endearing. I found their whole sense of like found family and their camaraderie and their friendship and love for one another to be so beautiful. And I thought that was a very nice touch. And the ending was very well done. My heart was beating fast. I was super anxious. I was flying through the pages and trying to turn as fast as I can to see what happened. It was a very climactic finish to the story. I really enjoyed it, and I gave this 5 fabulous stars because wow. Next, I read We Used to Live Here by Marcus Cleaver, which everyone is talking about this book, and for very good reason, because it is awesome and it is amazing. So in We Used to Live Here, we follow Eve as she's settling in for a quiet Friday night in with her partner Charlie. She's waiting for her to come home so they can have dinner, as a mysterious family of 4 shows up at her door with the father Thomas asking if he can come into the house and show his family around, because he grew up there and he used to live there when he was younger. So Eve, being a people pleaser, and although she doesn't really want to let them in, she kind of is like, what could it hurt? And she lets them into the house. And from the moment they enter the house, the different wild and unsettling and crazy events that transpire and take place is mind-blowing. Is the only word I can think of. And the slippery slope and the wild ride we go on in this book is superb. I loved every bit of it. It filled me with dread. I had the unease from the first sentence, from the first paragraph. I just felt uncomfortable. I felt like, don't let them in. I felt the anxiety and the pressure, and I just felt all of the emotions. So, I don't know, the pace was spot on. It was perfection. I really enjoyed that. It kept me on my toes. I didn't know what was going to happen next. I didn't know where it was going to go. I had no idea what was going on. And I like that feeling. I like that feeling of like unease and tension and anxiety. And it made me feel scared. I made a whole experience of it, by the way. I had the horror music playing, the dim setting and everything, freaked myself out. Had to look over my shoulder like multiple times. I don't know. This was such an amazing experience reading this book. It spooked the crap out of me. The ending was superb for me. I know a lot of people don't really like the ending, but I love the ending. I kind of like wild, interesting endings like this, which it is. It's a wild and very interesting ending. I really liked it. And this book, it was superb. It's actually my favorite book of the month was this book, because it far exceeded my expectations and I loved it. And I'm looking forward to reading more work from Marcus Cleaver in the future. I think this was a solid debut effort, and I gave it 5 fabulous stars. So the next book was The Guilt Trip by Sandy Jones, and in this story we follow the friendship group of Rachel and Jack, Paige and Noah, as they are traveling to Portugal for Jack's brother Will's marriage to Allie. And on this trip, there are some secrets and some tea that is being spilled, that is happening, that is threatening the friendship dynamic and causing a ruckus and just really threatening everything that Rachel believes and holds to be true and to be dear. I did not enjoy this book at all. I love this cover. I thought that it was beautiful, but I thought that it dragged on and on and on about this specific topic and the suspicions of Rachel when it comes and pertains to her husband and his fidelity. It was kind of like dragging this whole thing on, and it felt like beating a dead horse because we kept going over it and over it. And in my mind, and just in how I live my life, if I were in her shoes, I would have just straight up confronted my husband and have the conversation. Everything else, be damned. And the fact that she didn't, and the reasons that she gave for not doing it, and that she just sat there fuming and being kind of like unhinged, it irritated me. Because again, I just felt like it was a conversation that could have been had, and you could have went there and you really didn't. And I don't know, a lot of these secrets, some of the secrets were major secrets that were wild, and then I felt like there were other secrets that I felt were stupid. I felt that, I don't know, I felt like they were just thrown in there to kind of create more chaos and to create more of a wild situation. And I don't know, this just didn't work for me. It really didn't work for me. It wasn't a compelling mystery either, and like the things that happened at the end, it was just, I found that to be so dumb. I found it to be so dumb, and I was like, are you serious? Be so for real. And I don't know, this just was not my cup of tea. I gave it 1 star. I hated this. I wish I would have DNF'd because I hated this. Okay, so my second David Grant of the month was The Wager, and I really enjoyed the story. He is just so good at retelling historical events in such an immersive and just like entertaining and just wild way. So in The Wager, we're following the events of what happens with the sailing of the ship of the, what do you call it? The British ship? The British Admiralty? The Wager, as they are embarking on a secret mission for the crown. But due to unforeseen conditions out at sea, and also to the fact that there's just inclement weather, all these different things that happen, they become shipwrecked on an island off the coast of Patagonia, and madness ensues where they are just from crazy conditions, not having enough food, not having water, not having proper shelter, them not really having best confidence in their captain, and just all the little fighting and the stealing of food, of rations, and all the different things that happen there. It was just wildness, madness. Anyway, this to me was just an awesome exploration of human nature when we are put into challenging and trying situations. The things that come out of us, the actions, the way it just shifts our psychological and our emotional ability to like act, to think, to rationalize things, and the way that we will rationalize possibly questionable and bad behavior because the ends justify the means. And this was a terrific exploration of that. It was well written, well researched, well done. I enjoyed it. 5 fabulous stars for David Grant, and he, I think, is another one of my new favorite authors because just I love his writing. So there's that. The next book that I read was LA Weather by Maria and Paro Escondon, and in this book we follow the Alvarado family throughout a year as they go through the ups and downs of life and have to make some monumental decisions that will have major impact on their family structure and just their lives. So in this story, after reading this story, because I did not really enjoy it as much as I wanted to, I read this story and I read about like the inspiration that the author had for this story. She said that she was inspired by telenovelas. And after reading that, I was like, okay, I can see it. Because when I tell you that she threw everything but the kitchen sink at these people, and they had all these different problems and issues that happened within the span of 1 year, I tell you, it was wild. Like, I couldn't keep up. I was just like, what? Like, constantly. So I can totally see that inspiration in the story. However, that did not work for me. I think for a multitude of reasons. So I think one of the main reasons it didn't really work for me is that we had a lot of different characters within the story, and I couldn't really connect and kind of create a relationship where I cared about what happened to them, and I cared about, you know, the events. Well, I cared about the events, but I just really couldn't like care or like them because I felt like they were just not likable people. And while you don't always have to read stories about likable characters or likable people in your books, I don't feel like this was the author's intention. I think she wanted you to relate to them. I think she wanted you to like them and to feel for them. And it just didn't happen for me because they just made some really wild decisions and they created a lot of their situations. They were horrible at communicating, and I don't know, just their decision making and their ability to just address things and kind of their, what's that word? Their hypocrisy. They were all hypocritical. Like the children especially were hypocritical of the parents, and I just didn't like them. I felt them to be whiny and just over the top and hypocritical, and just I did not like them. And I also felt like they didn't have any growth. Like we reached the end of the story and I didn't really see any improvement in what they went through within a year. They kind of felt the same. They really didn't grow or like have a character arc where I could take anything from that or where they took anything from their situations. We kind of get left out of that process of seeing them grow and evolve. And that felt empty to me. It felt worthless. Yeah, this book was not it for me, unfortunately. I gave it 3.5 stars. Yeah, it did not work. All right, so let's talk about the 3 Kindle reads that I read from my Kindle this month. The first one I'm going to talk about is Hidden Pictures by Jason Rekulak. So in this story, we follow Mallory Quinn. She's fresh out of rehab. She's looking to make a positive change in her life so that she can kind of get a fresh start in her life and start over. Her sponsor, Russell, recommends that she helps the Hamiltons out with caring for their son during the summer. And she's like, okay, sure thing. I would love to do that. So she ends up landing the job to care for the Hamilton son, Teddy, and she discovers that he is drawing some unsettling things. He is drawing, you know, pictures of a woman being strangled and a man dragging her into a hole and burying her. And they are very detailed. So she is becoming worried. And due to her neighbor Mitzi telling her that there was this mysterious crime that happened there, she begins to believe that maybe Teddy's being haunted by this ghost, and she is depicting the crime that transpired and that what happened there. So she seeks out the help of Mitzi and the landscaper Adrian to help Teddy, to figure out ways to help Teddy so that, you know, they can get this ghost or whatever it is to like scram. So this story, I enjoyed it. This story, actually, I didn't realize it, but it was a little polarizing. There are people that had lots of opinions and lots of feelings about this story. But I enjoyed it. I do think that Mallory Quinn suffered the same syndrome that a lot of characters in these thrillers suffer, where they're kind of like stupid and they kind of like do dumb things. But I also understand that sometimes you have to kind of have them be a little dumb in order to like move the plot along, or to have certain scenes or certain things take place. So I get that. I don't always appreciate that, because I think that you can still write a strong, intelligent, and effective character and still have like thrilling things or like wild things happen to them. But you know, whatever. It's just a way that some people prefer to like write their characters. But other than that, I found this story to be interesting and compelling. I did have my suspicions. I had some suspicions. And while I didn't work out exactly what my suspicions were, I wasn't too far off. I wasn't too far off what was really going on. And when everything unraveled and came apart in the end to the climactic finish, I was like, I knew something was off. So yeah, I enjoyed this story. I'm not gonna say it was I enjoyed it. It was entertaining. It kept me entertained. It kept me on my toes. I kind of figured some things out, but at the same time, it didn't interfere with my enjoyment of the story overall. I gave Hidden Pictures 4.5. Actually, no, I gave it 4 stars. I lied. I gave it 4 stars. The next book that I read was Things We Do in the Dark by Jennifer Hillier. So in this story, we follow Paris Peralta as she comes home from a yoga convention and finds her famous celebrity husband, comedian Jimmy Peralta, dead in his bathroom. She eventually becomes arrested for the suspicion of murder, and she is desperately working to clear her name in this crime because she did not commit the murder. However, due to the notoriety of this case and his celebrity, it is being splashed all over the news every which way. And this leads to the demons in Paris's past dragging forth and reaching out to her, and is threatening the present stability of the life that she has built and created for herself. Yeah, this book didn't work for me. I was excited about it because it was kind of pitched as this dark thriller, and I just didn't feel it was actually dark. I thought that it was going to be, I don't know, I feel like we scratched the surface of it being dark. We kind of didn't go into depth or into detail about the darker elements that are discussed in this story, and that kind of like threw me off. I was like, this isn't really that dark. We're kind of keeping it pretty safe and pretty tame when it comes to these different, more darker subject matter. So I found that to be okay, whatever. But the biggest thing that I really made this story not work for me is the lack of emotion that I felt from the characters and from the writing itself. It just fell completely flat for me. I couldn't connect with Paris. I couldn't connect with any of the other characters because it just came across as flat and emotionless and kind of empty. So I was just like, well, I don't feel anything since you don't feel anything, and we just both feel nothing. And then on top of that, when it came to very key plot twists or climactic moments in the plot, they were just so commonplace, so basic. There was no build-up, no intrigue, no tension to these moments. So you could just easily read them and they would happen. And it was just like, that's over with. There wasn't anything to like, again, compel you to feel something or to have a reaction. So it was just very anticlimactic for me. So, for all those reasons, this book did not really work for me, and I believe I gave it 3 stars. Did I? No, I gave it 2 stars. So there's that. The next Kindle read that I read was the beloved story, Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. So in this story, we follow Dr. Beatrice Ortiz, as she's at a crossroads in her life. She is about to enter into this divorce due to infidelity in her marriage, where her husband was having an affair with her best friend. And not only that, she is caring for and taking care of her brother Benny, who has kidney disease, and he is waiting to receive a new kidney, and he is just at a low point in his life, and he's struggling with depression due to the inability for him to live his life and fully function because of his condition. And the only bright spot in Brianna Ortiz's life is the upcoming promotion that was promised her at work. Unfortunately, she finds out that she's not going to get this promotion, that there is a new doctor, Jacob, that is in play for this promotion. So she gets very, very highly irritated and highly ticked off and is like, I hate this guy. Because of course he's going to get the promotion. Because he's a male. It's a boys club here. He's going to get the promotion. I'm going to get stuck out and it's not going to work out. So due to that circumstance, she hates this guy. But all things are not as they seem, because due to him writing her a letter explaining all these different things to her, explaining that he doesn't want this job, and just kind of bearing his heart to her, she realizes that he is not as bad as she initially thought that he was. And they develop a tenuous friendship. And when he asks her to help him out of a bind due to his brother marrying his ex-girlfriend, and his family being increasingly concerned about his emotional and mental stability, and he wants to just ensure them that he's okay, he's fine, and he's moved on. So he made up the fact that he had a little girlfriend, and he's asking her to step in and fake date him during this process and be at him at these family functions and attend the wedding with him, so that his family can understand that he's fine and he's okay. So they start fake dating, and lo and behold, feelings start to ensue, and it makes Brianna wonder if she would ever be able to fully let go and trust her heart with another man again. This story started off so freaking good. I loved Brianna, I loved her attitude, I loved her spunk. I also, I loved Jacob. I loved the way that he was, and how he was soft, and how he was tender, and how he was sweet, and how he was kind, and he was thoughtful and compassionate. And I also loved how the mental health rep was handled in this story. I found that that was beautiful. Dr. Jacob has social anxiety, and it was just explained and detailed in such a true and authentic way. And as a person who has social anxiety, a lot of the things that he was describing, the things that he would have to do, it was so spot on. And I felt seen. I felt like he gets it. And I found that to be such a beautiful element. I found that when they first started to build a little tenuous friendship, and they were passing letters and like giggling and like really getting to know each other, I found that to be such a cute and just adorable way for them to get to know each other, for their little boundaries and their walls to kind of come down, so that they can kind of flesh things out and kind of work towards a budding romance. So everything was going good until we get to them fake dating. And then that's when everything fell apart. It fell apart in a hot hurry. So they both were into each other, and they both liked each other. But they both were assuming and thinking the other person wasn't into them because of these weird circumstances or things that happened that made them think that, instead of again just going to that person and saying, hey, I have real feelings for you. I don't want to fake date you. I want to real date you. So can we make that happen? Instead of doing that, which would be normal, which would be fine, they just assume things and they just kind of made decisions based on those assumptions. And when people are trying to tell them, like, no, they're really into you, they're like, no, they're never. They're just being kind. They're just really good. And that got annoying. That got annoying like really, really quick. Because again, I just don't like miscommunication when it's done in that way. I feel like if something can be accomplished through a simple conversation, then it should be accomplished. And while they both had traumatic experiences in their past relationships, and I get that, that still should not lead or contribute to you being mute and not using your big adult words. That should actually inspire you to be more communicative and being more of an adult and using your big words. And that was annoying. That was so annoying, and that took up so much of the book. And I don't know. Also, I felt like Brianna gave Jacob so little. So little. She was very good at giving space and respecting his boundaries due to him having social anxiety, which I appreciated. But that was it. Everything else, it was Jacob extending himself and bowing over backwards and groveling for her. I don't like groveling. I don't think a man or a woman should have to grovel to a romantic partner to prove their worth and their value to another person and to say, I'm a trustworthy person. You can depend on me. You can be with me. And I love you and I want to be with you. A person shouldn't have to do that and grovel and demean themselves and just throw away their pride, throw away, their self-worth and their self-value to appease another person and to make themselves less of a threat. I just don't assign to the fact that a person has to dumb themselves down to be with a person. Because if you have to dumb yourself down, dilute, water down, bend over backward, jump through 50 hoops to be with a person, in my opinion, that person ain't for you. And I just felt like Brianna was not the person for Jacob. And when I felt that, the story was over for me and I couldn't see them together as a couple because again, like this man literally said, use me. And when he said that, I was like, I'm done. You don't need to be with her because that's ridiculous. I didn't find that romantic. I didn't find that cute. I found that very toxic and problematic. So it was 2 stars for yours truly, which really sucks because it was highly rated, highly recommend. Everyone loves this story and I just did not. I don't know what the hype is, yo. So there's that. And the books that I read on Halloween for my spooky Halloween evening includes a graphic novel, Demon in the Wood, the Darkling origin story by Lee Bardugo and illustrated by Danny Pendergast. And I love this. It wasn't what I expected. I was expecting something more like this is what happened to the Darkling. This is what caused him to like switch and to like twist and to like become the character, the enigmatic and kind of like dynamic character he became. But this just gave you more of a softer side, more of a softer element, more of a kind of melancholic view of who the Darkling was and how he was raised and the situations that he faced in a country that didn't accept Grisha and where he had to literally live in hiding or be executed. So I found that to be a more humanizing element to his story. And it makes me, because he's one of my favorite villains. He's one of the villains that I really empathize with. It made me empathize with him that much more actually. And yeah. So I really enjoyed this. The illustrations were beautifully done. This is my first graphic novel, to be honest, but I really enjoyed it and I gave this 5 fabulous stars. And then I read some stories from my Complete Tales and Poems of Edgar Allan Poe. I read a couple of stories. I read The Fall of the House of Usher, which was exquisite. It was amazingly done. The gothic vibes in that story, if you love gothic vibes and you love like a good gothic atmosphere, he detailed it so perfectly. The foreboding, the dread, the gothicness of it. Just he spent so much time detailing that and just making you feel those feels and feel that kind of terror and unsettling. He did this so well in this story, and I enjoyed it. 5 stars for that story. Then I read my favorite. This is my favorite, all-time favorite Edgar Allan Poe story, which is The Tall Tale Heart. Love that story. That little sinister guy. It's so sinister, so violent, so shocking. I really enjoyed it. And then I read the poem The Raven, which is one of my favorite Edgar Allan Poe poems, and I enjoyed that as well. So yeah, that was my Halloween. All of that is 5 stars. So I love Edgar Allan Poe. Yeah, so that wraps up everything that I read in the month of October. Like I said, it was a tremendously awesome reading month. I enjoyed it. I had some duds in there, but that's okay. That's allowed. You can't have a home run every time you read, but it was amazing, and I'm super excited for what is going to transpire in November. And I'm so looking forward to a month of fabulous reading in November. So hope that you had a tremendously awesome reading month for October, and wishing you nothing but happy reading in November. And until next time, bye.